The first thing anyone heard was the sound. Not music, not laughter, not some cheesy DJ announcing the next throwback song. It was a low, distant thumping. Thump 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 thump. At first, everyone inside the old gym thought it was just the bass. You know the kind, they rent giant speakers because someone on the planning committee believes volume equals fun, and next thing you know the floorboards are vibrating and you can't hear your own thoughts. But this was different. Conversation started to stutter and trail off as people tilted their heads, glancing toward the high windows that lined the top of the gym. A couple of the guys near the bar got that little boy look, eyes wide, eyebrows high. "Is that a helicopter?" someone said. The DJ actually stopped the music mid-song. The speakers popped, then went silent. For the first time since the class of 20-something 10-year reunion started, you could hear nothing but that rhythmic pounding from the sky and the buzz of questions. And then someone laughed. A loud, smug, too pleased with himself laugh. Ryan Hale. He was standing near the folding table they'd turned into a makeshift bar, a half-finished beer in one hand, the other in the pocket of his perfectly tailored pants. He was still tan in all the ways that scream expensive vacations, his hair still styled like he'd just stepped out of an ad. But his eyes were locked on the window, lit up with this awful, electric kind of curiosity. "No way," he said. "There's no way. Did she actually?" "Mia," he called out, turning to the woman beside him. "Tell me I did not just manifest this." Mia Carter followed his gaze, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. She'd been the one walking around pretending everything was normal tonight, pretending that the reunion was just this sweet nostalgic little event and not one long performance of who's winning at life. She squinted up at the window, even though you couldn't see anything yet. "You're imagining things," she muttered. "Helicopters don't just." From the parking lot, somebody yelled. Doors banged open. A rush of people who'd been smoking or taking calls outside started pouring back in, faces flushed, talking over one another. "What's going on?" someone near the doorway asked. "There's a helicopter," a woman in a tight blue dress practically shouted. "Like, actually landing?" "On the field." "The football field," another voice said. "Who even?" "Okay, I got to see this," one of the guys from the old basketball team said, already moving toward the double doors. And then the words that changed the whole energy in the room came, half joking, half terrified, from a girl with glittery eyeshadow and an overexcited smile. "Do you think it's her?" The room went quiet in that weird, rippling way, people pretending not to be listening and absolutely listening. You know who they meant, right? Every class has one. The one the cool kids decide is the joke. The one who never quite fits, no matter how hard they try, or maybe because they stopped trying. At Ridgeview High School, class of 20-something? That was Emma Lane. Or, as some of them had called her back then, the ones now standing there in designer shoes and polished watches and fragile confidence, the class loser. Ryan's grin widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "There is no way," he said again, almost to himself. "We sent that invite as a joke." "Ryan, shut up," Mia hissed, her stomach twisting. "We didn't invite her as a joke. We just—" "Oh, come on." He turned on her with that same old charm he used to get out of anything. "You literally wrote in the group chat, she'll probably show up in the same sneakers from senior year." The words hit her harder than she expected. She remembered typing them. She also remembered hesitating before she hit send, something ugly and guilty twisting in her chest. Now, with that sound pulsing through the walls, thump thump thump, her joke didn't feel funny anymore. Somebody pulled the gym doors open, and suddenly, the cool night air rushed in with the sound of those blades cutting through it. People moved as one, a wave of expensive perfume and cologne and nostalgia and nerves, flooding out toward the field. From the side doors, they streamed down the concrete stairs, past the bleachers that still smelled faintly of metal and memory, out to the edge of the football field where so many of them had once screamed themselves hoarse at Friday night games. Now, that same field was lit up by the bright, swinging beams of a helicopter's landing lights. If you're still watching this right now, pause and imagine this. You're standing there under the stadium lights, dressed in the best version of yourself you can afford. Maybe you starved for a week to fit into that dress. Maybe you rehearsed your job title in your head to make it sound impressive. And then a helicopter starts to land in front of your old high school. How do you feel? Excited? Intimidated? Curious? Jealous? Because that crowd felt all of it at once. The helicopter descended, blades slicing the air, sending everyone's hair flying and skirts whipping around their knees. People shielded their faces and laughed, but it wasn't relaxed laughter. It was high and strained and full of nerves. The machine settled onto the painted white lines at the 50-yard mark, the word Ridgeview barely visible under the swirl of wind and dust. The doors stayed closed for a moment. Every second stretched. You could hear whispers even over the dull roar. Who is it? It has to be some kind of stunt, right? Maybe the principal invited some motivational speaker. No, I heard, someone said. And then the door opened. A man in a black suit stepped out first, sunglasses still on even though it was night, scanning the field with the kind of casual alertness that screamed, professional security. The crowd's volume dropped. Then, a second figure emerged. A pair of black heels touched down on the field turf, graceful and sure. The woman who followed them out rose to her full height, one hand lightly touching the doorframe as if she had all the time in the world. Her hair was swept back into a low twist at the nape of her neck that probably took some stylist an hour to make look that effortless. The navy dress she wore was simple but somehow looked like it cost more than every suit in the gym combined. A thin gold bracelet glinted at her wrist as she raised a hand to smooth an invisible strand of hair from her cheek. She turned her head, eyes scanning the crowd. For a heartbeat, no one recognized her. And then Mia saw it. Not the expensive dress, not the perfect makeup, not the quiet confidence in the way she stood. She saw the eyes. The same soft hazel, framed by lashes that used to be hidden behind scratched-up glasses. The same slightly crooked eyebrow. The same small, uncertain tilt at the corner of her mouth, only now that uncertainty had been replaced by something else. Control. Holy, Ryan's voice died in his throat. No way. Standing there on the football field, lit by the helicopter lights and the stadium lamps, was the girl they once voted most likely to still live in her parents' basement. The girl whose backpack they'd emptied onto the hallway floor as a joke. The girl they'd photoshopped into memes and passed around group chats. The girl who left graduation without saying goodbye to anyone. Emma Lane. And she had just arrived at their 10-year reunion, by helicopter. What nobody in that crowd knew yet, not really, was what had to happen in those 10 years to turn class loser into the woman standing in front of them. But that's the thing about time, right? It doesn't just heal. It reveals. So, let's rewind. Back then, when the halls of Ridgeview High were still the whole world, Emma's arrival every morning was quieter. No helicopter. No spotlight. Just the squeak of her worn-out sneakers on the polished floor. Senior year, she used to slip in just a little after the first rush, when the hallway was still busy but not swarming. Head down, backpack strap clutched in one hand like a lifeline, her other arm folded around the stack of textbooks she refused to leave in her locker because she didn't trust that they'd still be there when she came back. She wasn't imagining it, either. Freshman year, someone had taken a Sharpie to her math book, writing loser in thick black letters across the inside cover. Sophomore year, her gym clothes had mysteriously gone missing the week before the fitness test. Junior year, her locker had been plastered in sticky notes with every insult they could think of, nerd, rat, trash, and a few words that still make people flinch when they remember them. No one ever got caught for those things. No one ever does, do they? At least, not right away. If you've ever watched this happen in a high school, watched one kid slowly become everybody's favorite target, you know how it starts small. A whisper here. A laugh there. A joke that doesn't really mean anything. And it grows. Because the more people join in, the easier it is to pretend that it's just harmless fun. In Ridgeview, that dynamic had names and faces. Ryan Hale was one of them. He was already the kind of guy adults loved to brag about, captain of the soccer team, class president, never missed a chance to flash that grin that said, "I'm a good kid, I swear." Teachers trusted him. Parents envied him. Other kids wanted to be him. Mia Carter was another. She wasn't the loudest or the meanest, but she had what mattered most in high school: social gravity. When she walked into a room, people rearranged themselves without even realizing they'd done it. She had shiny hair, a cheer captain's jacket, and an Instagram full of photos that made teenagers across town wish they'd been invited. And then there was Emma. She wasn't ugly. That's the funny part. If you see her photos now, you catch glimpses of the woman who stepped off that helicopter. Even back then, her features were soft and pleasant. But high school doesn't care about potential. It cares about presentation. Her clothes were mostly thrift store finds, a size or two too big, like they'd been purchased with the idea that she could grow into them, only she never grew, and the clothes just kept hanging off her small frame. Her hair was usually pulled back in a messy ponytail, not the intentional kind, but the "I got 4 hours of sleep and I'm already late" kind. She carried a cheap, off-brand backpack with one broken zipper, the fabric frayed at the edges from being repaired too many times. People noticed. They always do. "Hey, Lane," Ryan had called out once as she'd passed by their locker cluster, his voice casual but loud enough to draw a few heads. "You know this isn't, like, a charity event, right? You can wear clothes that cost more than $5. His friends laughed. A few of the girls turned, their eyes flitting over her outfit. Emma's face had gone red, but she'd kept walking. Mia had watched it all from her perch on the windowsill, swinging her legs. "You're such a jerk sometimes," she'd said later, half-hearted, like the words were something she was supposed to say and not something she really felt deep enough to act on. "Come on," Ryan had replied, shrugging, pulling his Letterman jacket tighter around himself. "She doesn't care." "How do you know?" "She never says anything." He'd grinned, then tossed his water bottle into the trash from across the hall. It made it in. The boys cheered. If she cared, she'd stand up for herself. Besides, it's just jokes. She knows that. But Emma didn't know that. Because she knew something you might know too if you've ever been on the receiving end of that kind of joking. When enough people laugh at you, it doesn't sound like laughter anymore. It sounds like a verdict. Home wasn't much easier. After school, Emma would walk the 5 blocks to the small, peeling house at the corner of Ridge and Willow. The yard was a patch of stubborn grass fighting with bare dirt. The porch steps creaked under her weight. Inside, the air always smelled faintly of disinfectant and can soup. Her mother would call from the living room, her voice weak but warm. "I'm home," Emma would say, dropping her backpack by the door. Her mom's illness was one of those things people in town pretended they didn't know about and absolutely gossiped about. Lupus. Or maybe it was something else. The specifics didn't matter to the teenagers at Ridgeview. All they saw was that her mom couldn't work, and that meant bills piled up, and that meant Emma's clothes came from donation bins and discount racks. There was one person who never seemed interested in that kind of gossip. Marcus Reed. Everyone called him Mark. He wasn't popular or unpopular. Just there. Tall, with a quiet presence that made teachers smile and other kids forget to be mean around him. He wore the same faded denim jacket most days and had this habit of choosing the seat next to whoever looked the most uncomfortable. Senior year, he chose the seat next to Emma in AP English. "You're in my seat," she'd said the first time, not looking up from her notebook. He glanced around at the empty desks. "Sorry," he said. "I must have missed your nameplate." She'd almost smiled. Almost. From then on, it became routine. He'd slide into the chair beside her, drop his backpack onto the floor, and ask her about whatever book she was reading. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie moment. It was just kindness. One day, he'd watched as she quietly wiped at her eyes while staring down at a red ink-covered math test. "You okay?" he'd asked softly. "Yeah, I love failing for fun," she'd muttered, then immediately regretted how sharp it sounded. "Sorry. That was... I'm fine. I just, my mom's been really sick, and I've been working more hours at the diner, and I didn't study enough. Mark nodded like that made perfect sense. Because it did. Want me to help you with the next unit, he offered. I'm decent at algebra. I can translate math teachers speak into human language. She blinked, caught off guard. Why? She asked. He shrugged. Why not? You ever notice how, in stories like this, there's always at least one person who doesn't go with the crowd? Sometimes they're loud about it. Sometimes they're quiet. Mark was quiet. He still laughed at some jokes he shouldn't have laughed at. He still stayed silent when he should have spoken up. He wasn't a hero. He was just a kid who tried, in small ways, to make someone's life a little less heavy. And sometimes, that matters more than you think. The night everything really broke started as a joke. At least, that's what they called it. Senior superlatives. You remember those, right? The fake awards in the yearbook? Most likely to succeed. Class clown. Best smile. At Ridgeview, they took it a step further. The official, school-sanctioned list was one thing. But the students wanted something edgier. So a group of them started a Google form, anonymous, of course, and shared it around. Honest Superlatives, they named it. It spread like wildfire. They added categories that would never fly with the administration. Most likely to end up on reality TV. Most likely to marry for money. Most likely to still live in their parents' basement at 40. You see where this is going. Ryan and his friends campaigned hard for certain people to get certain awards. It was all just for fun, they said. Just something for the unofficial senior slideshow they planned to play at the post-graduation party. Relax, Mia had said when one of the girls asked if it was too mean. No one's going to remember this in 10 years. Isn't that ironic? The kids they made fun of remembered every word. The ones who did the making fun, they just assumed they'd move on. When the results came in, someone posted a screenshot of the parents' basement category in the senior group chat. It was a landslide. Emma Lane. The comments started rolling in immediately. Lamau brutal. Y'all are savage. Low-key accurate though skull. Stop. Mia had typed back. At least she won something this year. She'd hesitated before hitting send, fingers hovering over her phone. Then she'd pressed it. You know that moment? That half second where you know you're doing something wrong and you do it anyway because you want to belong. Yeah. That. When they decided to include that award in the slideshow, no one asked if Emma was okay with it. No one asked if it would hurt. No one thought about the fact that she'd be standing there, in a dress she'd bought secondhand, in heels that pinched her toes, in front of the entire senior class and their families. They just thought about the laugh. The auditorium was packed that night. Senior awards night. Parents in their best clothes. Teachers in slightly rumpled suits. Kids buzzing with equal parts boredom and excitement. On stage, the official awards came first. Scholarships. Academic honors. Sports recognitions. Emma's name was called once, for an academic award in science. She walked across the stage in a plain black dress, her hair pulled back, borrowed heels wobbling slightly under her. A few kids clapped politely. Mark clapped like she'd just won an Olympic medal. She smiled, small and shaky, as she shook the principal's hand. But that wasn't the moment everyone remembered. That came later. After the boring stuff. After the last official speech. All right, class of 20-something, the student MC said into the microphone, grinning wide. We've got something special for you all, a little tradition started by last year's seniors. The totally unofficial, totally honest senior superlatives. The students cheered. The parents looked confused. The lights dimmed, and a projector screen lit up on stage. Most likely to marry their high school sweetheart, the first slide read, with a photo of a couple everyone knew had been together since middle school. Laughter and oaths filled the room. Most likely to become internet famous. Most likely to be president. The categories were silly, sometimes flattering, sometimes mildly embarrassing. Then the next slide came up. Most likely to still live in their parents' basement at 40. Mia felt a flicker of doubt even before she saw the photo. It was like her stomach knew before her brain did. And then Emma's face appeared on the screen. A candid shot, taken sometime last year, probably by someone sitting across the cafeteria. Her hair was messy. She was staring down at her tray, mid-chew. They'd added a cartoon basement background behind her, complete with cobwebs and a flickering light bulb. Someone had drawn in a video game controller and a bucket of empty chicken boxes next to her. The room reacted in layers. First, a burst of laughter from the student section. Then confusion from the parents. Then a hush as the adults realized what, exactly, the joke was. Emma sat frozen in her seat. The red velvet of the auditorium chair pressed against her back. Her hands were clenched so tight in her lap that her nails dug into her palms. Her face went hot. Then cold. Then numb. Beside her, Mark's jaw tensed. He looked from the screen to her and saw it, the way her eyes glazed over, the way her chest rose tighter, the way she seemed to shrink into herself. "That's not funny," he muttered under his breath. On stage, Ryan and a couple of the other cool kids were off to the side, helping with the slideshow. When the laughter hit, Ryan felt the rush he always got, the thrill of being the one everyone was paying attention to. Okay, the MC said, chuckling into the mic, "Y'all are savage." In the audience, Mia's heart pounded. She was sitting near the aisle, a perfect view of everything. At first, she'd smiled, the expression automatic. It was part of the role she'd been playing for years. But the longer the slide stayed up, the more wrong it felt. She could see Emma from where she sat today. Could see her shoulders shaking. Mia, one of the girls beside her, whispered, "You guys are evil." "Yeah," another said, half gleeful, half appalled. "I didn't think they'd actually put it in the slideshow." "This is too much," someone else muttered. That's the thing about too much, though. It always feels like that, after. When the slide finally changed, the laughter didn't fully recover. The energy in the room had shifted. Emma stood up. She didn't make a scene. She didn't shout or cry out or run up on stage. She just quietly rose to her feet, clutching her small black purse, and made her way down the aisle toward the back exit. A few heads turned. A couple of teachers frowned. No one stopped the show. Mark hesitated for half a second, then stood up too. "Where are you going?" his friend whispered. "With her," Mark replied. He followed her out of the auditorium, the heavy doors swinging shut behind him with a soft thud that might as well have been a gunshot. In the hallway, the lights were dimmer. Emma was standing by the water fountain, hands braced on the wall, trying to breathe. "Hey," Mark said softly. "Emma." She didn't look at him. "You okay?" "That was a stupid question," she rasped, a bitter laugh catching in her throat. "I'm great, actually. Best night of my life." He stepped closer, but not too close. "I'm sorry," he said. "They shouldn't have done that." She snapped, whipping around. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You mean we? Because you all laughed. You all watched. You all let it happen." He flinched, but he didn't argue. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You're right." The honesty took some of the wind out of her anger. She sagged against the wall. "I knew they didn't like me," she said, voice cracking. "I'm not stupid. I can see the looks. Hear the whispers. I know what they call me." He swallowed. "They're wrong," he said. "Are they?" she whispered. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I am just nothing. Maybe in 10 years, I'll be exactly where they think I'll be." He shook his head. "You won't," he said. "You're smart. And you work harder than anyone I know. And you care about things that actually matter." She laughed again, but it was hollow. "That's not what counts in high school. No, Mark agreed. But high school ends. She stared at him, searching his face. And then what? She asked. Then suddenly people stopped being cruel? He didn't have an answer for that. What he did have was a small, crumpled envelope in his jacket pocket. Look, he said instead. Miss Patel asked me to give you this if I saw you tonight. She said it's important. He pulled it out and handed it to her. Her name was written on the front in neat, looping handwriting. Why didn't she just give it to me herself? Emma asked, confused. She's stuck backstage helping coordinate, he said. Something about scholarship paperwork. She said she wanted to make sure you got this tonight. Emma stared at the envelope like it might bite her. Open it, Mark said gently. Her fingers trembled as she tore the seal. Inside was a letter, handwritten, and a folded document. The letter started with, Emma, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to catch you before you slipped away like you always do, *. By the time she got to the end, tears were streaming down her face. Because in that letter, Ms. Patel had written all the things no one else had ever said out loud. That Emma was brilliant. That she saw how hard she was trying. That she believed, with everything in her, that Emma's life could be bigger than this town, bigger than this school. And attached to the letter? A scholarship offer. A real one. Not some local, $200 book fund kind of thing. This was a substantial, multi-year scholarship from a foundation Ms. Patel had quietly helped her apply to months ago. Full tuition for a university in another state, plus a stipend. Emma's breath hitched. This can't be right, she whispered. They wouldn't give this to me. Mark smiled, eyes warm. They did, he said. And they're right. In the auditorium, the slideshow continued without her. On that stage, her classmates laughed at a version of her they thought they knew. In the hallway, holding that letter, something in Emma shifted. High school wasn't her whole world anymore. It was just the first chapter. A painful one, sure. But not the last. Graduation came and went. Emma walked across the stage, but she didn't stick around after. She took her diploma, hugged Ms. Patel so tightly that the teacher had to wipe her eyes afterward, and left. No photos under the school sign. No hugs with classmates. No screaming, sweaty group shots in caps and gowns. She slipped out the side door, climbed into the old car her uncle had loaned her, and drove home. A week later, she was gone. To most of Ridgeview, it was like she'd vanished. The rumors started, of course. She dropped out of college, I heard. No, she never even went. The scholarship thing was fake. I saw her at the grocery store last summer, she looked exactly the same. Funny thing is, people will confidently talk like they know the whole story, even when they haven't checked a single fact. For Emma, those first few years after high school were brutal. She went to that university on the scholarship. Between classes, she worked 2 jobs, one at the campus library, one cleaning offices at night. She slept when she could. She studied when she couldn't. There were days she considered quitting. There were nights when the words from that slideshow played on loop in her head. Most likely to still live in their parents' basement at 40. It hurt. But it also lit a fire. If I ever end up back in that town, she told herself once, staring at her reflection in a cracked dorm mirror, it's going to be because I chose to. Not because I had nowhere else to go. She stumbled into a major that mixed computer science and environmental science. It turned out she had a knack for solving problems that involved both code and real-world messes. A professor noticed. An internship followed. Then another. By year 4, the girl in thrift store clothes had been replaced by a young woman who still shopped secondhand, but now it was because she wanted to, not because she had to. She'd learned how to cut her own hair in her dorm bathroom. She'd learned how to walk into a room and pretend she belonged until her brain started to believe it. After graduation, she joined a small startup working on clean water solutions for rural communities. Long hours. Low pay. High impact. The kind of thing that wouldn't impress the Ridgeview reunion crowd, at least, not right away. But here's something you might need to hear. The work that changes your life doesn't always look glamorous at first. Sometimes it looks like 12-hour days, second-hand laptops, and instant noodles. Sometimes it looks like fieldwork in worn-out boots and sample bottles instead of boardroom presentations. Emma stuck with it. When that startup folded, because most do, she didn't take it as a sign that her classmates had been right. Instead, she saw everything she'd learned. The gaps. The mistakes. The opportunities. So she started her own thing. Not overnight. Not with some magical investor. She freelanced. She saved. She built. Out of a tiny studio apartment and a borrowed co-working desk, she launched a company focused on affordable, portable water purification systems for communities that big companies ignored because there wasn't enough profit margin. It was slow. It was messy. There were nights she cried herself to sleep from sheer exhaustion, only to wake up and do it all over again. And then one day, a pilot project in a small town went viral. Not because of her. Because a kid in that town posted a before and after video on social media, showing the difference between the murky brown water they'd grown up with, and the clear water they now had thanks to her system. The video exploded. A journalist called. Then another. Investors who had ignored her emails for months were suddenly so excited to chat. Her company grew, not in some fantasy montage way, but steadily, with every month just a little better than the last. She made mistakes. Hired people. Fired some. Hired better. And in the middle of all that, Ridgeview still existed. But it was far away. Until the email. Back in that small town, 10 years after the class of 20-something walked across the stage, the reunion planning started in a group chat. 10 years, you guys, someone wrote. That makes me feel nauseous, someone else responded. We should do something big, another chimed in. Mia read the messages on her lunch break, sitting in the break room of the marketing firm where she now worked. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A half-eaten salad wilted on the table in front of her. She was tired. The kind of tired that sleep didn't fix. Her life looked decent on Instagram. Apartment in the city. Occasional beach pics. A boyfriend who looked good in photos even if he didn't always show up in the ways that mattered. But under all that, there was this quiet ache. Not regret, exactly. Not yet. Just a question she avoided asking herself. Who am I, really, when I'm not performing for other people? The reunion planning committee formed quickly. Of course, Ryan was on it. Got to make sure this thing is a success, he wrote. We can't have class of, whatever the year, outdoing us. They debated venues, themes, dress codes. The school gym or the country club? DJ or band? Finger food or full dinner? One night, as the chat was buzzing, someone threw a new question into the mix. Are we gonna invite everyone? A girl named Allison asked. Like, everyone. What do you mean? Someone replied. You know, Allison sent a laughing emoji. Even the people no one remembers? There was a pause. Then Ryan replied. We invite the whole class, he wrote. Gotta be inclusive, right? Several laughing emojis followed. And hey, he added a moment later. Maybe we should make sure Emma gets her invite. Can't have our, most likely to live in a basement, winner miss the 10-year check-in. See if the prediction came true. The chat lit up. Stop. You're terrible. OMG, imagine if she actually shows up. If she does, I'll give you $50 if she's not wearing those same ugly sneakers. Mia stared at the messages, a sour taste in her mouth. It had been 10 years. 10 years since the slideshow. 10 years since she'd watched Emma walk out of the auditorium. 10 years since she'd typed that stupid joke in the chat. And yet, here they were. Still making her the punchline. She started to type. Maybe we should leave her alone. It's been a decade. Then she deleted it. What she sent instead was, "LOL, you're evil." 2 seconds later, another bubble popped up. "You're the one who made that sneakers comment, Mia." She forced out a little laugh in the break room, even though no one was there to see it. "Yeah," she replied. Guilty. If you've ever gone along with something you knew was wrong just to keep your place in the group, you know that feeling. That little twist of self-disgust. Then someone asked the question that changed everything. "Wait," Allison wrote. "Does anyone even know where she is now? Like, what she's doing?" "No idea," a guy replied. "She probably dipped out of this town and never looked back. Or she's literally in a basement somewhere," someone else joked. "Be nice," Mia typed before she could stop herself. Or, "Mia's gone soft," Ryan teased. "Don't worry. I'll handle it." The next day, he sent a screenshot into the chat. It was an email draft, addressed to an old address they dug up from the school directory. The subject line, Ridgeview High, class of 20-something, 10-year reunion. The body was cheerful, formal, almost nauseatingly polite. Asterisk Dear Emma, asterisk. Asterisk We hope this message finds you well. The Ridgeview High School class of 20-something is excited to invite you to our 10-year reunion, asterisk. It looked like every other reunion invite. Nothing in it screamed, "We're doing this to laugh at you." That's the thing about cruelty: when people grow up, it gets dressed up a little nicer, but it's still the same underneath. Hit send, someone wrote. Ryan did. And in a small apartment several states away, after a long day of meetings and calls, Emma opened her email and saw it. At first, she almost archived it without reading. The subject line alone made her want to close her laptop. But something made her click. She read the invite twice. Then a third time. Then she sat back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. 10 years. She thought about the auditorium. The slide. The laughter. She thought about Ms. Patel's letter. She thought about the communities her company was now helping. The projects she was overseeing. The board meeting she'd just left where people twice her age had deferred to her judgment. She thought about the girl she used to be and the woman she had become. And then she laughed. Not bitterly. Not cruelly. Just, softly. Of course, she murmured to herself. Of course they want a 10-year check-in. She could have ignored it. She could have deleted it and moved on. She could have stayed in her new life, in rooms where people called her Ms. Lane, and invited her to sit on panels and asked for her advice. But that letter from Ms. Patel was still in the drawer of her nightstand, edges worn from being reread. And deep down, there was a part of her that had never really closed the book on Ridgeview. So she replied. Asterisk Thank you for the invitation. I'll be there. Asterisk. The reunion night came faster than anyone expected. The gym was decorated in school colors, banners from old championships hanging on the walls like faded ghosts. The DJ played songs that had been hits their senior year, blending them with newer tracks for the spouses and plus ones who didn't understand why everyone screamed when a certain throwback came on. Name tags waited on a table by the door, each one printed with their high school yearbook photo and current name. Wow, they really did us dirty with the photos, someone laughed, picking up theirs. Oh my God, look at my hair, another groaned. Mia arrived a little late, intentionally. She'd spent far too long getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before landing on a simple dress that felt like her, not just the version of her she used to project in high school. Her hair was shorter now. She'd cut it after a bad breakup, the cliché kind of decision that, surprisingly, made her feel lighter. She wore less makeup than she had at 18, comfortable enough now to let a few imperfections show. As she stepped into the gym, the smell of cheek punch and floor polish hit her like a memory. Look who finally showed up, Ryan called out, waving her over. His smile was just as bright, but there were faint stress lines at the corners of his eyes now. Traffic was insane, she lied. Sure, he said with a smirk. Or you were just having a crisis in your mirror. She snorted, rolling her eyes. If anyone was having a crisis, it was you, she shot back. I bet you tried on at least 3 shirts to make sure the logo showed but didn't look like you were trying. He tugged at his designer collar in mock offense. I'll have you know, this is effortless, he said. Besides, I have an image to maintain. Right, Mia replied. Ridgeview royalty. He grinned, but there was a flicker of something else in his gaze. The thing people don't tell you about 10-year reunions is that everyone is measuring themselves. Not just against who they used to be. Against who they thought they'd be. You see the guy who was supposed to go pro but now manages a sporting goods store. The girl who talked about leaving the country but is still living 3 blocks from the school. The quiet kid you barely remember who now somehow looks happy. There's a scoreboard running in everyone's head. Ryan felt it acutely. The impressive job title. The expensive watch. The confident banter. None of it filled the small, quiet pit in his stomach that whispered, "Is this it, asterisk?" He looked around, taking inventory. That's 3 kids, he muttered under his breath, nodding at a girl who had arrived with a stroller. 2 divorces. 1 guy who definitely lied about his job. Mia elbowed him. Stop grading people, she said. I'm just observing, he replied. Anyway, the real event hasn't even started yet. She frowned. What are you talking about? He raised an eyebrow. Emma, he said simply. Her name hung between them. You really think she's coming? Mia asked, trying to sound casual. She RSVP'd, he said. I checked. She said yes. So? Mia said. People say yes and don't show up all the time. Not when they're Emma, he replied. She was always a little teacher's pet. If she says she's going to do something, she'll do it. Mia looked away, something twisting in her gut. Across the room, she saw Mark. He was leaning against the far wall, a plastic cup in his hand, chatting with one of their old teachers. His hair was a little shorter, his jawline a little more defined, but his posture was exactly the same, relaxed, open, like he wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. When their eyes met, he smiled and lifted his cup in a small salute. She smiled back, suddenly grateful there was at least one person in this room who had always tried, in his own quiet way, to be decent. The DJ turned the music down as the principal, older now, hair thinner, tie slightly crooked, took the mic. Welcome back, Ridgeview class of 20-something, he boomed, to a wave of cheers and whistles. He launched into a speech about how proud he was, how fast time flies, the usual stuff principals say at things like this. Mia half listened, her mind elsewhere. Hey, Ryan whispered, nudging her. Field. Now. She blinked. What? He gestured subtly toward the doors. Trust me, he said. You're not going to want to miss this. There it was again. That sound. Thump thump thump. At first, Mia thought she imagined it. Then she saw others glancing toward the windows again, just like they would a few minutes later. Déjà vu, only she didn't know it yet. Ryan, she said slowly. He was grinning now. Not a nice grin. If she really went all out just to show us up, he said, this is going to be legendary. Show us up. Mia repeated. What are you talking about? If she shows up in some beat-up car, you win 50, he said. If she shows up like this. He tilted his head toward the growing noise. I win the satisfaction of knowing she spent 10 years trying to prove us wrong. There was something so ugly in the way he said it that Mia actually recoiled. You think this is about you, she snapped. Everything's about me, he joked. But his eyes said he wasn't entirely joking. Then the doors opened, the rush of air came in, and the rest, you already saw. The helicopter. The landing. The heels touching the turf. The moment where recognition washed over the crowd like a wave. Emma. She walked toward them with the kind of poise you usually only see in people who spend a lot of time on stages. Except there was no arrogance in her stride. Just steadiness. Her security guy lingered a step behind, scanning the crowd. Another staff member, assistant, maybe, fell into place on her other side as they crossed the field. As she got closer, the details became clear. Her dress wasn't flashy. No sequins, no plunging neckline. Just clean lines, good fabric, and a fit that made it obvious someone had taken the time to tailor it exactly for her. Her hair was still that same soft brown, but now it was shinier, healthier, styled like she had a whole team behind her if she wanted it. Her makeup was natural, the kind that takes time and technique to look like you just woke up that way. And her eyes? They were the same. Only now, instead of flinching away from attention, they met it head-on. She scanned the crowd as she approached, and you could tell she was taking everyone in. Not checking if they were impressed. Just seeing them. She reached the edge of the crowd, the turf giving way to concrete, and for a moment, no one moved. Then Mark stepped forward. "Hey, Emma," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. Her gaze snapped to him. For a heartbeat, the poise cracked, and there it was, the shy, uncertain girl from AP English, blinking at him like she couldn't quite believe he was real. "Mark," she said, a genuine smile breaking across her face. "Wow. Hi." He laughed, relief visible in his posture. "You look different," he said, then immediately cringed. "I mean, you look good. Not that you didn't look good before, just." She laughed. "Relax," she said. "You look different too. Taller, somehow." "I stopped slouching," he replied. "Helps." They both smiled. Around them, the others watched, some with curiosity, some with envy, some with annoying discomfort they couldn't quite name. Then Ryan pushed his way to the front. "Well, well, well," he said, spreading his arms like he was welcoming a celebrity to his talk show. "Look who decided to join us. Emma Lane, back from saving the world." His tone was light, playful. But anyone really listening could hear the edge. Emma turned to him. "Hi, Ryan," she said evenly. He took a step closer, his cologne strong enough to catch even in the open air. "You clean up nice," he said, eyes raking over her. "Guess you finally upgraded from the sneakers, huh?" A couple of people chuckled, reflexive. If you've ever been in a situation like this, you know how it goes. Old roles reappear like ghosts. Old dynamics try to snap back into place. But people aren't ghosts. They grow. Emma tilted her head slightly, regarding him. "You know," she said calmly, "it's been 10 years, and that's the first thing you choose to say to me." Her voice wasn't angry. It was curious. Like she was observing something under a microscope. Ryan's smile faltered, just a fraction. "I'm just messing with you," he said quickly. "You know, like old times." "Yeah," she replied softly. "I remember old times." Mia's throat tightened. Because in those 3 words, she heard everything. Every hallway whisper. Every Sharpie on a textbook. Every meme in the group chat. Every laugh in that auditorium. "Anyway," Ryan said, clearing his throat. "We weren't sure you'd show. Got tired of proving us wrong yet?" There it was. Saying the quiet part out loud. Emma didn't flinch. "I didn't come here to prove anything to you," she said. "I came for myself. And for a few people who deserve to see me making it out of here alive." She glanced at Mark. He ducked his head, hiding a smile. Ryan opened his mouth, some snappy comeback loading. Before he could speak, the principal's voice boomed from behind them. "Emma," he called, hurrying down the concrete steps. "You made it." He looked older, as she'd expected. But his smile was the same as it had been when he'd handed her that diploma. "Thank you for inviting me," she said, shaking his hand. "Are you kidding?" he replied. "I should be thanking you. Listen, there's actually something we need to talk about before the program starts. Do you have a moment?" She nodded. "Of course." He led her toward the side entrance, gesturing for her to follow. Her security and assistant moved with her, a practice dance. As she walked away, the crowd burst into whispers. Did you see the helicopter? Who even does that? I heard she started some kind of company. I saw her on a panel at this conference my boss watched. I think her company was on the news, something with water. Mia stood there, heart pounding in her chest. Hey, she said, turning to Ryan. What did you think was going to happen? That she'd show up in her old clothes and beg for our approval? He shrugged, defensively. Relax, he said. She just proved my point. What point? That people like her only get motivated when people like us push them, he said. She should thank us. We made her tough. The words were so twisted, so self-serving, that Mia actually felt dizzy. You didn't make her tough, she said quietly. You made her suffer. He rolled his eyes. Same difference, he muttered. And in that moment, Mia realized something. He wasn't just immature. He was stuck. Still in high school, in his head. Still the golden boy, still the center, still convinced the whole world spun around his choices. Only now, the world had moved on. He just hadn't noticed. Back inside, the program started. The principal took the mic again, welcoming everyone, cracking the same jokes he'd probably told at 5 reunions before this one. Then his tone shifted. Tonight is special for a lot of reasons, he said. 10 years is a milestone. Many of you have started families, careers, new lives in different cities. Some of you have traveled the world. Some of you came right back home and are keeping this community running. I'm proud of all of you. He paused, looking around the room. But there's something else that makes tonight special, he continued. And I've been waiting a long time to say this, so I hope you'll bear with an old principle, all right? A few people laughed. He glanced toward the side of the gym, where Emma now stood with Mark and a couple of teachers. Over the past few years, he said, our school has benefited from a series of anonymous donations. Some of you might not know this, but our science labs were recently renovated, our library expanded, and we were able to start a new scholarship program for students pursuing studies in environmental science and engineering. The teachers near the back started clapping. A few parents who'd heard of the changes nodded. These donations, the principal went on, came from a single alum. Someone who preferred to remain anonymous, until tonight. The room buzzed. Mia's breath caught. I'm honored, the principal said, his voice thickening with emotion, to finally introduce you all to the person whose generosity has already changed the lives of dozens of students at Ridgeview, and will continue to do so for years to come. He turned, extending a hand. Please join me in thanking Emma Lane. For a second, the room didn't react. It was like the words hung there, too wild to make sense. Then heads turned. Eyes widened. And a slow wave of shocked realization spread across the gym. Emma stepped forward. The applause started small. A few scattered claps from the back. A couple of teachers on their feet. Then more. Then more. Until the sound filled the gym, bouncing off the walls where their teenage voices used to echo. If you're still listening right now, tell me in the comments, how do you think you'd feel in that moment? If you were Emma, standing on that stage? If you were one of the kids who laughed at her 10 years ago? If you were one of the few who tried to help? Because in that gym, people felt everything. Pride. Shame. Awe. Jealousy. Regret. Emma took the microphone from the principal, her fingers steady. Thank you, she said, her voice carrying clearly even without shouting. For the record, I tried to stay anonymous. But apparently, some people can't take a hint. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, easing some of the tension. She smiled. I'm not really a speech person, she lied, because she'd given plenty by now. But I guess if you fly into your high school reunion in a helicopter, you owe people some kind of explanation. More laughter. I didn't do it to show off, she said, her tone shifting. I swear. The helicopter was actually my assistant's idea. Apparently the roads around here haven't improved much in 10 years. The crowd chuckled again. Her assistant in the corner shook their head fondly. The truth is, Emma continued, I didn't think I'd ever come back here. When I left after graduation, I was pretty sure Ridgeview was just a place I survived. Not a place I'd want to revisit. She glanced around the gym, taking in the old championship banners, the faded lines on the floor, the faces staring up at her. But, she said, life is funny. You think you're writing one story, and then it takes a turn you never saw coming. She paused, choosing her words carefully. In high school, she said, I was not popular. A few people snorted, quickly stifling it. I know, shocking, she added dryly. Laughter, a little more genuine this time. I wore the wrong clothes, she said. I didn't have the right phone. I spent more time in the library than at parties. My mom was sick, and I worked nights at the diner to help pay the bills, so I wasn't exactly available for pep rallies and bonfires. She took a breath. And because high school is what it is, she went on, that made me an easy target. Her eyes swept the room. A few people looked away. I remember almost every joke, she said quietly. Every whispered comment in the hallway. Every time someone took a picture of me without asking so they could turn it into a meme later. Silence. And I remember, she continued, voice thinner now, that slideshow. The honest, senior superlatives. Standing in that auditorium while a photo of me eating lunch was plastered on a giant screen with a caption that said I'd still be living in my parents' basement at 40. You could have heard a pin drop. In the back, someone shifted uncomfortably. On the side of the room, Ryan's face had gone pale, his jaw tight. When that slide came up, Emma said, I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. I wanted to disappear. And honestly, for a while, I did. She let that sit. But something else happened, too, she said finally. After I left the auditorium that night, one of our teachers, Ms. Patel, made sure I got a letter. In that letter, she told me that she saw me. That she knew how hard things were. That she believed I was capable of more than this town, more than that school, more than that moment. She smiled sadly. And attached to that letter was a scholarship offer that changed my life. The teachers started clapping again. She glanced toward the back of the room. Miss Patel isn't here tonight, she said softly. She passed away a few years ago. But before she did, I got to tell her that I did exactly what she believed I could do. And I promised her I'd pay it forward. Her hand tightened on the microphone. That's why I started donating to Ridgeview, she said. Not because I owe this place anything, but because there are kids here now who feel like I did then. Kids who think high school is a life sentence. Kids who think that being poor or weird or quiet means their future is already decided. She looked down at the front row, where a few current students had been invited to help with the event. If that's you, she said, her voice gentle, I promise you, they are wrong. High school is loud, but it's not permanent. The people who laugh the loudest right now? Most of them are just scared. She looked back up at her classmates. And if you were one of the people doing the laughing, she added, I don't need you to feel sorry for me. I'm okay. A small, wry smile. More than okay, actually, she said. I built a company that helps bring clean water to communities that need it. I get to work with brilliant people every day. I live in a place that I chose. I have friendships that are built on respect, not convenience. I'm not living in anyone's basement. A ripple of relieved laughter. But, she said, and the word landed heavy, I do think you should ask yourselves who you were back then, and who you are now. She let that hang in the air. There's this weird thing that happens at reunions, she continued. We all show up trying to prove we've made it. We practice our job titles, we rehearse our relationship statuses, we choose outfits that will say what we want them to say. She glanced at Ryan, just for a second. But the truth is, she said, it doesn't matter what you drove here, or what your LinkedIn looks like. It matters who you are when no one's watching. It matters how you treat people who can't do anything for you. It matters whether you've grown since you were 17, or if you're still playing the same role, just in nicer clothes. Somewhere near the back, someone muttered, damn. Emma took a breath. I forgave a lot of you a long time ago, she said. Not because what you did was okay, but because I didn't want to carry you with me forever. I wanted to be free. Her eyes softened. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it never happened, she added. It doesn't mean there weren't consequences. Some of you will always be the person who laughed at that slide in my memory. The question is that still who you are now? She looked around one last time. I came tonight, she said, not to prove that I'm better than you. I came to show that I survived you. That I turned the worst parts of who we were, me included, into fuel for something better. Her gaze found Mark. And I came, she added, smiling, to thank the few people who were kind when it wasn't cool. Mark's ears turned red. The room clapped again. If you're one of the people who hurt someone back then, she said, and you've been carrying that around with you, maybe tonight is your chance to make it right. Not for your image. For your conscience. She handed the mic back to the principal. Thank you, she said simply. The applause that followed was different this time. Not scattered. Not uncertain. Full. Some people clapped because they were genuinely moved. Some because they didn't know what else to do. Some because they hoped the noise would drown out the uncomfortable thoughts in their own heads. It didn't. Later, when the DJ started the music again and the gym lights dimmed, little pockets of conversation formed like storm cells. At the far end of the room, near the old trophy case, two former bullies awkwardly approached a girl they teased for gaining weight in sophomore year. One of them stammered out an apology, cheeks burning. Near the bleachers, a guy who used to laugh at anyone who wasn't cool enough, stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the floor, replaying the things he'd said in his mind. In a corner, a girl who'd been on the receiving end of those senior superlatives hugged herself and cried quietly, the sound swallowed by the music, finally letting go of a breath she'd been holding for 10 years. And outside, on the edge of the football field, under the same lights that had shone on that helicopter, Emma stood alone for a moment, breathing in the night air. Footsteps crunched on the gravel behind her. Hey! She turned. Mia stood a few feet away, arms crossed, the wind tousling her hair. Hi, Emma said cautiously. Up close, Mia looked different from how Emma remembered. Still pretty. But the sharpness that had once been in her eyes had softened. There were faint circles under them now, like she'd seen more late nights than she wanted to admit. I liked your speech, Mia said. Thanks, Emma replied. I wasn't sure how it would go over. Mia let out a short laugh. Judging by the number of people avoiding eye contact right now, she said, I'd say it landed. They both fell quiet. I owe you an apology, Mia said suddenly. Emma studied her face. For what, specifically, she asked. There's a lot of material to work with. The line was delivered lightly, but there was steel underneath. Mia winced. Yeah, she said. There is. She took a breath. In high school, she said, I thought my job was to stay on top. To keep my spot. And if that meant stepping on people or laughing at the wrong things or going along with stuff that made me feel sick, I did it anyway. She swallowed. I remember that group chat, she continued. The one where we planned the honest superlatives. I remember the memes. I remember the sneakers joke. That was me. I said that. Emma nodded slowly. I know, she said. Mia blinked. You do. I wasn't in the chat, Emma replied. But people screenshot everything. There isn't a lot of privacy in high school. Mia's cheeks burned. I'm sorry, she said, the words coming out in a rush. I'm so sorry. I knew it was cruel, and I did it anyway. You didn't deserve that. None of it. Silence stretched between them. If you're watching this and you've ever hurt someone, intentionally or not, you know how terrifying that silence is after you apologize. Because in that silence, you can't control the story anymore. Emma looked out at the field. You ever think, she said slowly, about what you would have done if I hadn't come back like this? Mia frowned. What do you mean? Emma turned back to her. If I had shown up tonight in the same sneakers, she said. If I was working a job you didn't think was impressive. If I was tired and stressed and a little broken. Would you still be here, apologizing? Mia opened her mouth. Closed it. Tried again. I'd like to think so, she said honestly. I've been carrying this guilt around for a while. It's not like I suddenly remembered tonight. But I also know that it's easier to apologize to someone who's clearly doing well. Because it looks less like pity and more like respect, I guess. She shook her head at herself. That sounds awful when I say it out loud, she added. It sounds honest, Emma said. They stood there for another moment. I can't change what I did, Mia said quietly. I can't change that I didn't stand up for you. Or that I cared more about fitting in than doing the right thing. All I can say is, I'm not that girl anymore. Or at least, I'm trying not to be. She glanced up, eyes wet. You don't owe me forgiveness, she said. You don't owe me anything. I just needed to say it. Emma studied her. She remembered every smirk, every whisper, every time Mia had looked away in the hallway instead of meeting her eyes. She also remembered the way Mia had occasionally hesitated before laughing. The way her comments sometimes sounded more like self-defense than attack. You know, Emma said eventually, for a long time, I told myself that if I ever saw you all again, I'd want to crush you. Show up in something designer, roll up in an expensive car, make you feel as small as you made me feel. She smiled faintly. The helicopter was, honestly, partly that impulse, she admitted. I'm human. Mia huffed out a surprised laugh. Fair, she said. If I were you, I'd probably have brought a marching band too. But then, Emma said, I thought about Ms. Patel. About Mark. About the communities my company serves. About the kids sitting in this gym 10 years from now. She shrugged. I don't want to be another person who uses power to make someone else feel powerless, she said. I've had enough of that for one lifetime. She looked Mia in the eye. I forgive you, she said. The words were simple. They landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Mia's breath hitched. You do, she whispered. I do, Emma said. Not because what you did was okay. But because I don't want to carry it anymore. And because, honestly, I think you've been punishing yourself longer than I ever could. Tears spilled over onto Mia's cheeks. Thank you, she said, voice breaking. God, I don't deserve. Probably not, Emma said with a small smile. But that's the thing about forgiveness. It's not a transaction. It's a decision. Mia laughed through her tears. You really grew up to be the wise one, huh? She said. Emma shook her head. I grew up, she said. That's all. They stood there for another few seconds, the noise from the gym a distant hum. You know, Mia said, wiping her eyes, if you're ever in the city and want to get coffee, I'd like to hear more about what you're doing. Your company sounds incredible. Emma nodded slowly. Maybe, she said. One step at a time. It wasn't a promise of a new best friendship. It was a door, cracked open. Sometimes, that's enough. Later that night, as the reunion wound down and people started trickling out, Ryan found himself alone near the trophy case. He stared at the reflection of his own face in the glass, distorted by the surface. Behind him, he could see the faint outline of the soccer trophies. The plaques with his name on them. The framed photo of the team he'd captained. He'd always thought those would be the things that defined him. Now, all he could hear was Emma's voice. Ask yourselves who you were back then, and who you are now. Footsteps approached. You hiding? Mark asked, coming to stand beside him. Just taking a break, Ryan said, not quite meeting his eyes. You could start with, I'm sorry, Mark said. Ryan bristled. For what? He snapped. For 10 years ago, Mark said. For tonight. Take your pick. Ryan scoffed. She doesn't need my apology, he said. She has money. A company. A helicopter. She won. Mark shook his head. That's not what this is about, he said. It's not about who won. It's about who you were. Who you still are. Ryan finally looked at him. You think you're better than me? He asked. No, Mark replied. I think I made different choices. Some better, some not. The difference is, I'm trying to own mine. He paused. Were you always this much of a jerk? He added. Or is it just a habit now? The question hit harder than any insult. Because Ryan didn't know the answer. He thought about the way he'd laughed at that slide. The way he'd hit send on that email invite. The way he'd been more concerned with winning a bet about Emma's appearance than with what it might feel like for her to walk into this building again. He thought about the emptiness he felt whenever he left the bar after another night of telling the same old stories. The hollowness when he posted another photo meant to prove how great his life was. I was just a kid, he said weakly. So was she, Mark replied. Silence. You know what I remember? Mark added. I remember you giving that speech at graduation about leadership. About being the kind of person others can look up to. I believed you, man. I thought maybe you meant it. Ryan swallowed. I did, he said. Then maybe it's time to start acting like it, Mark said. He clapped him lightly on the shoulder and walked away. Ryan stood there for a long time. The next morning, he woke up with a headache that wasn't just from the alcohol. A few days later, he sat down at his laptop and opened a blank email. Asterisk subject, no good subject line for this. Asterisk. He stared at the cursor for a long time. Asterisk Emma, asterisk. Asterisk I don't know if you'll read this. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. Asterisk. He wrote the email 3 times. Deleted it twice. Sent it once. In it, he didn't try to justify anything. He didn't say if or but. He just admitted, clearly, that he'd been cruel. That he'd enjoyed the attention more than he'd cared about the damage. That he was sorry. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said it. He didn't get a reply. Not for a while. Weeks later, when he'd nearly given up expecting one, a short message appeared in his inbox. Asterisk Ryan, asterisk. Asterisk thank you for the email. I appreciate the honesty. I hope you become the person the 18-year-old version of you pretended to be on that stage. Asterisk. Asterisk take care, asterisk. Asterisk Emma, asterisk. It was not absolution. It was an invitation. To grow. Whether he took it or not, that was up to him. Months passed. Life went on. Ridgeview got new lab equipment and a scholarship program named after Ms. Patel, courtesy of Emma, who donated the money quietly and asked for her own name not to be anywhere near it. The first recipient was a girl who wore thrift store clothes and walked the halls with her head down but had a notebook full of inventions and ideas. Emma flew back for the ceremony. No helicopter this time. Just a rental car and a quiet seat in the back of the auditorium. She watched as the girl walked across the stage, cheeks flushed, eyes wide. She watched the way the other students looked at her, some with envy, some with respect. And she smiled. Afterward, she slipped out the side door, just like she had 10 years earlier. Only this time, she wasn't running away. She was moving forward. And what about Mia? She went back to her life in the city. But something had shifted. She started noticing the small ways people were dismissed in her own office, the intern who never got invited to after-work drinks, the receptionist everyone talked over, the junior designer whose ideas were always too much until a senior employee repeated them. One day, in a meeting, someone made a joke about the intern's community college background. Everyone chuckled. Mia didn't. That's not funny, she said out loud, surprising even herself. The room went quiet. Later, the intern caught up with her in the hallway. Thank you, they said quietly. For what? For saying something, they replied. Most people just laugh. Mia thought about the girl she'd been. The silence she'd kept. The laugh she'd forced. Yeah, she said softly. I know. She started making different choices. Not perfect ones. But better. She still stumbled. Still caught herself judging. Still replayed the reunion sometimes and cringed at who she had been. But every time she chose kindness over cruelty, action over silence, she felt a little less like the girl who'd sent that sneakers joke, and a little more like the woman who'd stood on that field and apologized. She stayed in touch with Emma in a distant but steady way. A forwarded article here. A congrats on the feature there. Over time, the messages became less awkward. More human. Maybe one day, they'd sit across from each other in a coffee shop and laugh about something that had nothing to do with high school. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, they were no longer locked into the roles that Story had written for them. They were writing new ones. As for Emma, she kept building. Her company grew, but she was careful about it. Every new office, every new hire, every new project, she asked herself the same question. Am I building a place where people feel like I did in high school, or the opposite? Her employees noticed. When someone messed up, they weren't humiliated. They were coached. When someone new joined, they were welcomed, not tested. When someone quiet had a good idea, she made sure they were heard. She didn't tolerate cruelty disguised as just joking. Because she knew exactly what that felt like on the receiving end. One day, after a long meeting, her assistant knocked on her office door. Hey, they said. Got a weird request. Some podcast wants you to talk about overcoming bullying and turning pain into purpose. Emma groaned. Catchy title, she said. Let me guess, they want me to cry on air. Probably, the assistant said. You don't have to do it. Emma leaned back in her chair, thinking. Then she smiled. Maybe I will, she said. If it reaches some kid who thinks high school is the end of their story, it might be worth it. She looked out the window of her office, at the city skyline. And maybe, she added, it'll reach someone who was the bully. Someone who's ready to stop being the villain in someone else's memory. Her assistant nodded. You're getting philosophical on me, they teased. Hazard of the job, she replied. When she recorded that podcast, she didn't mention Ridgeview by name. She didn't name names. She didn't say, helicopter, even once. But she did say this. If you're listening to this and you're the one being laughed at right now, I want you to know something. Their laughter is not a prophecy. It doesn't get to decide who you become. You do. She paused. And if you're listening to this and you were the one doing the laughing, it's not too late to be better. Not performatively. Not just with the people you think are worth it. With everyone. 10 years earlier, in a small-town auditorium, a slide with a cruel caption had made a room full of teenagers laugh. 10 years later, on a football field under helicopter lights, the girl on that slide stood taller than every one of them, not because of her money or her success, but because she chose to grow instead of rot. That's the real plot twist. Not that the loser became rich. Not that the unpopular girl arrived by helicopter. The real twist is that she refused to let their worst moment define her best years. She did the hard thing, she healed. She forgave. She changed. And some of them did, too. So, if you're still here at the end of this story, I want to ask you something. Who were you in high school? Who are you now? Were you the one on the receiving end of the jokes? Were you the one making them? Were you the one who stayed quiet and looked away? Wherever you were standing then, you don't have to stay there now. You can be the person who finally says, that's not funny. You can be the person who sends the apology. You can be the person who believes in the kid everyone else has written off. And if you're the one who's hurting, who still hears their laughter in your head, remember Emma. Remember the helicopter. Not as some symbol of revenge, but as a reminder that your story can take you places those people never imagined. If you believe everyone deserves the chance to grow, to change, to write a better chapter than the last one, hit that like button. If you've ever seen something like this happen, or lived through it yourself, tell me in the comments what you would have done at that reunion. Would you have apologized? Walked away? Confronted someone? And if you want more real-life style stories like this, stories about respect, redemption, and the quiet courage it takes to become better than your past, make sure you subscribe. Because in the end, the real glow-up isn't arriving by helicopter. It's arriving as someone you're proud to be.